One of the things that we're gleaning now from the paleoclimate record beyond temperature is what happens to the water cycle locally in terms of intensification of storms, storminess. And one of the things that I'm very interested in is the formation of hurricanes and superstorms that could occur when we enter these sort of warm regime time periods.
What would a superstorm consist of?
Well, it's just a very large, intense hurricane. And these things can propagate to very high latitudes. Usually, in today's world, the sea surface temperatures are cold enough in mid-latitudes that by the time a storm like that reaches high latitudes, if it doesn't hit land, it dies out because it's just the water is not warm enough to sustain it. But when you go back in time to these times when even at mid-latitudes or even high latitudes, sea surface temperatures are extremely warm. These systems that form in the tropics can propagate up to the polar regions, both in the north and southern polar regions. So whether that will occur in the future, we don't know. That's one of the reasons we're doing this research and using models as well as observations to better understand the likelihood of that sort of scenario playing out in the future.
What would be the evidence for an extreme storm going that far back? I mean, how do we read that? How can we even tell?
Well, there are certain geologic formations that show up in the record, in the geologic record, that are related to storms impacting coastal regions and disturbing sediments, and those disturbances in the sediments. So-called hummocky pattern to the sediment shows up in the geologic record, which can be interpreted as an increase in storminess. And people are looking for those for these different time periods. They're hard to find because they're very local, and you sort of have to know where the storms were hitting. So it literally is, almost finding the needle in the haystack when you think about the scale and what the geologic record, it exposes what it can. Most of it's buried, and so it's an opportunity. It's one of these things that if the opportunity is there in the geologic record and you can find it, it will tell us something about things like impact of storms on coastal regions.